34-26, and a massive moment in this season for the Commanders, who have now dropped 3 straight. Don't let the scoreboard fool you. Late yards, late points, following a largely lackluster offensive effort by the Commanders, who now find themselves inching ever closer to a crowded NFC wildcard picture. Fellas, this is one of those games that you have a hard time explaining what you saw. It is, however, our jobs. What did you see from Washington? Let's start at the end and work backwards. Slow to start, but in those final moments, you make the play, and it's the K game that can't get it done.
Yeah, it's funny because they got better as the pressure started to ratchet up, which tells you that this team is locked in with their head coach, Dan Quinn. But what we saw the entire game was an offense that was highly inconsistent, no running game to speak of, outside of Jaden Daniels scrambling a little bit. They couldn't run the football. They made themselves one-dimensional, and on top of that, the defense just didn't do a good job of getting off the field. So it was a complete combination of errors for the Washington Commanders up until the final 5 minutes of the ball game, where things had to get done. It's like you wait for the last minute to do that test or turn in that term paper. They did a great job to get back to the ball game, but the football guys will always make sure the right team will win, because at the end of the day, you don't miss that extra kick, extra point.
Yeah, should have gone for 2. I don't know what the analytics said, but I thought maybe they had, because to your point, they had not been as efficient as they were early in the season under Cliff Kingsbury. And there's a whole conversation about second half Cliff Kingsbury. How does that look compared to first half? Because in Arizona, those offenses were on fire. And then those teams sort of fell off the cliff offensively. But I'll say this, Dallas has won 6 of 7 against Washington now, going back 7 games. And in those games, they've scored over 30 points. Once again, 34. I don't think anyone would imagine this, given that Dan Quinn had left Dallas and Mike Zimmer's defenses have struggled, and what he had done in Washington. And we talked about the offense and them having success. But maybe Cooper Rush is the short-term answer. We talked about whether they needed to go to the backup quarterback and give him a chance, and Trey Lance. And we're not at practice, and Cooper is good enough to get them close in games like this. But I think the bigger story is the fact that the Commanders are now 7-5. They're the 7th seed.
Yeah.
A month ago, we were saying this team's going to win the division, and we'll see how the rookie performs under pressure. He's seen pressure before at the college level. This will be different. The last month of the season, they typically don't play 17 games in college, so there's that to concern themselves with as well. It'll be fun to watch, because it's funny how this roller coaster ride goes in terms of Rookie of the Year MVP, and now we're talking about, okay, let's dial it back and make things easier for him.
I will take every opportunity I am given to remind people that this year's 2-point conversion rate, 31%. CC the analytics department. I know there's a lot of unforced 2-point conversion happening, but in that moment, maybe that is the lever you pull after the way they played, and that's what I want to talk about here, because Jaden Daniels looked great when his team needed it most at the end of this game. Didn't look great throughout. Some designed run that did get him to the end zone twice. But what are you seeing in the passing game right now for Daniels that's making the job a little bit harder than it was those first 7 weeks?
I think he's just missing throws that he was making the first 7-8 weeks of the season. We know he had the rib injury and was a little banged up halfway through the season, and maybe he's not 100%. But you could argue, guys, that no one is 100% at this point. And the plays that came easy, and I don't want to put this on Cliff Kingsbury in terms of scheme, because he's the same guy he's always been. Guys are open. They're not connecting for whatever reason. You talk about the last 15 minutes of that game, Joe, where it felt like Jaden Daniels turned a corner. You have to figure out how to do that sooner. And by the way, on defense, I know this defense isn't lights out. I think Dan Quinn's done a lot of smoke and mirrors in terms of getting the most out of this unit. I think you have to be able to shut down Cooper Rush, and you can't have Rico Dowdle go for 86 yards and expect to win a game at home like this that you should win to maintain your spot in the NFC East there.
Maybe we are underselling the injury of Brian Robinson early in the game, because without him being a factor 100%, I know he went back out there and played, but he probably wasn't 100%, took away their ground game. And if you think back to when Washington was the talk of the town, their run game was really well, and it was because of Brian Robinson in conjunction with Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, but there's Dallas D.
But Dallas D was playing inspired ball today. They played great ball.
I don't know what they told him before the game, but it worked.
Exactly, because now you got the quarterback that's not running like he used to run. The running game is not there because of Robinson's injury, and so now you have to completely rely on a passing game. And if we're being completely honest, pound for pound, personnel for personnel, this was a great matchup for the secondary of the Cowboys versus this Washington Commanders receiving corps.
Take no opponent lightly. It is a lesson learned here and a lesson learned elsewhere here on Sunday.
Meanwhile, back here inside of Studio 43, I'm James Brown along with Coach. To me, I know
it's just a bad kick.
It was a bad kick.
But even as a kicker, I'm no kicker, but as a kicker, you see a bad snap.
No.
And isn't there a hesitation there?
There's trust you have to have. There's a degree of trust you have to have as a kicker with that.
But it throws off the timing,
It
Coach.
may throw off all those things, but those are the concentration, having coached special teams.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Okay, I've coached special teams. It's not always going to be perfect. You're going to have it inside, you're going to have it low. I'd much rather have it lower than higher.
So you're telling your kicker, you got to go through your motion, kick through whatever you see in front of you.
You have to trust the fact that ball's going to be down. And as I looked at the holder did a great job to me picking that off and putting that ball. Laces were away from him. And I think it may have, though he may have altered his focus and his concentration on there, maybe trying to slow down the operation. You can't slow down the operation, which is why, to me, he got through it and missed it left.
It's interesting. It's interesting with Washington, as we've seen all year. It's the details.
Yeah.
In critical times, to do the little things right. You've got a snap, a kick, and a hold that you got to get down to put that into overtime. A couple of weeks ago against Pittsburgh, you have the fourth down or the jump offside situation at the end of the game that ends their chance. The difference right now between 2 or 3 more wins for the Washington Commanders, small little details to have to get it cleaned up.
And, Coach, let's go back to your point again. Division games at this point in the year.
And you can see it happen all afternoon. You sit there, we talked about Houston and Tennessee. You talk about Washington and Dallas. It's amazing. I mean, and these teams, they don't look at records. They're the one they have to play these teams twice a year. And these games become personal.
Yeah.
And I mean, and it's something because it takes you into the next year. And these are the same teams you're going to play twice next year as well.
Yeah.
Throw the records out. Forget about your superstars. Doesn't matter if Dak's playing or not. We know you better than you know yourself. So this game will be competitive regardless of how we both are coming into this one.
Well, you know what? You were talking about Washington and in terms of what this means to a young squad trying to get there. Yeah. Elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, for Washington, this is tough, right? It's been multiple times throughout the year where it's lack of discipline, lack of fundamentals, lack of just being on the same page has not, gotten them to where they want to go to. I think of the offsides penalty against the Pittsburgh Steelers today, fumbled execution on the snap, place and hold on the extra point. Just disappointing. But Jaden Daniels keeps putting them back in these positions. He has no flinch to his game. That throw down the sideline to Terry McLaurin to get them up the sideline to score right there. I mean, it's impressive what he's done.
Yeah, it's unbelievable when you look at what the Commanders have done. They have really turned around not just their play on the field, but we are looking at this organization differently. It's tough, though, when you look at the losses. Today, forget about that onside return. That was less than a touchdown.
Yeah.
The week before, a touchdown loss to the Eagles. The week before that, they lose by 1 to the Steelers. And we remember the Ravens took them down to the wire. They lose by a touchdown. These are all really good teams they're losing to, and they're in every single game. And they still got a shot to make the playoffs. That gives you a little bit of hope knowing that we're good enough to play with the big dogs.
There's no question. And it was a divisional game. We talked about that all day long. But the thing Cooper Rush has done in these last 3 weeks has been very impressive. He's out there for Dak Prescott. And for Mike McCarthy, this is a big win going on the road against all the things you're talking about, a team that's in the contention. They aren't. But, man, they came out and played well today.
And you mentioned with Mike McCarthy going into this season without an extended contract. Look, my hat's off to him.
They played hard today, and they got Micah Parsons back, and the defense looked like they
that
played
seat
better.
is hot.
Yeah.
That seat is hot.
No question about it. All right.